Welcome in, everybody, to the Bare Knuckle Recovery Podcast. This is episode 22. I'm Tommy Streeter. This is Nate Mollering, and you guys know that we're all about giving the people what they love, so we brought Bob Springer back on the podcast today for a couple reasons. One of the things we're going to talk about today is rebuilding relationships, primarily with our families from the addict's perspective. Once we sober up and start getting our lives back together and start working on rebuilding those relationships with our families and what that kind of looks like from our perspective, but also because Bob is now officially a Bare Knuckle Recovery team member.
That's right.
So we wanted to bring him back on and give him a public congratulations for that. So, Bob, we're happy to have you on the team. Happy to have you back in the studio again today.
I'm happy to be on the team, back in the studio.
Yeah. Bob's still doing his thing with Felonies Recovery, too. Always want to shout that out. Great page. I think a lot of people find hope on that. So we always enjoy what you have to say there, too.
It's absolutely a passion.
Yeah. Well, that also plays into what we're talking about today. You know, there's a lot of things that happen out there in active addiction, right? Whether it's stealing from our families, ending up missing time with them because we're out using, because we're out, committing crimes. And also then sometimes we have to pay for those crimes, right? Like, as Bob, you know all too well. And then that can take us away for long periods of time sometimes, right? So when we go back to rebuild that relationship, I think a lot of people are very apprehensive about where to even begin. And I think, people watching this will benefit that are in recovery, that maybe are in active addiction, seeing that there's hope that they can rebuild those relationships. But also even some of the family members watching will probably gain a little insight into what the mind of people who struggle is, and maybe how the best way to approach them is if you also want to rebuild the relationship from that perspective. And we'll do another episode. We've talked about doing a couple of them actually, where Tommy has his aunt and a couple of his aunts on.
My mom.
Yeah.
If my mom can come up here from the beach.
Absolutely. She's living her best life, retired, all down in South Carolina. And
after I got married, my mom was like, all right, he's your problem now, and moved to the beach.
She passed him off. And, so we all look out for Tommy now. We do our best, but, this guy. And then maybe my parents will come on, and maybe my grandparents. So we'll see what happens. But today, again, we're talking about the perspective of the person who struggled and who may still be struggling and rebuilding that relationship, what it looks like. I think it's important to always talk about from the beginning, there's a wide range of experiences that people have with their families too, right? I mean, Bob, your experience is different than mine. But for me, I know that, growing up as somebody who struggled with substances, addiction is a lot about us focusing on our feelings and how we feel. We don't think about other people and how our attempts to alleviate those feelings impact the people around us. I do remember having empathy as a kid, but I was so focused in my own head about feeling different than everybody that, and not to say that I wasn't compassionate in certain moments. Like, if somebody fell down on the soccer field when I was a kid, I'd be the first one going over to help them up. And I think a lot of that more had to do with still my focus on myself, thinking about how would I feel if I fell down. I want somebody to come help me up. So I do think that as a kid I had a good heart, but kids look at their parents as superheroes and they put them up on a pedestal. Whether we look back and think that they were great parents at the time or not doesn't matter. I think a lot of kids forget that their parents also have feelings, right? We're so used to them kind of being the ones in charge.
Yeah.
We start to resent them, even as children, small children, right? So I think that goes by the wayside. And I want a lot of families to understand that, because I'm sure there's parents out there that think, why doesn't my kid love me? Like, my son has seen me cry. How many times do we see our moms cry? We're out there getting high. Mom's begging us, "Mate, please don't use drugs anymore." And I'm like, I know, I won't. And then as soon as she walks out of the room, I'm rifling through her purse, trying to get $20 out. My mom just poured her heart out to me. Not because I didn't love my mom, but it had such a hold on me. It didn't matter. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't love myself. So I couldn't even begin to think about that. So I think it's important to talk about those dynamics as well, starting out. Like, people don't understand, like a lot of addicts, we struggle with relationships. That's why we start getting high in the first place, right? Because it creates this artificial sense of connection. They talk all the time about alcohol as a social lubricant, right? You start drinking, you don't care if your jokes are funny. They're funny to you.
Right.
Right?
I still feel that way.
Well, yeah. When you're drunk or when you're sober?
This is about my jokes not being funny to other people.
Tommy doesn't drink. It's a joke.
I think they're funny.
maybe we might start drinking because we have to deal with Tommy, but
That's your problem.
he's got me teetering on the edge.
Don't blame your relapse on me.
That's right.
That's not how it works.
But it is important for families to know that we don't get anybody sober and we don't get anybody drunk. And as parents, that's true too, right? So that's the thing to also talk about is like a lot of parents are like, where did I go wrong? There's no perfect playbook that's going to make you the perfect parent. I always tell parents, you made the best decision with the information you had on hand at the time. That's all you can do. And some people their parents never showed them how to be a parent. So, my family was lucky. Like they had their parents around and their grandparents were still alive at the time when they had me. So you could reach back 2 generations of wisdom. Not everybody has that, right? So I always try to tell parents, like, don't beat yourself up, and people who are struggling right now, because there's people that have kids who are struggling, but then there's people who are watching who have a strained relationship with their parents because they're using, but also a strained relationship with their kids because they're using too, right? So there's people in the middle that their kids are too young to use, so they're not using, but they are themselves, and then their parents are sober too. So you can have a strained relationship both ways. But, again, nobody gets you sober, nobody gets you drunk.
Yep.
So, Bob, do you want to talk a little bit about your childhood and, your interaction with your parents? And then we can talk further on about how those relationships were eventually amended. You could talk about your parents, but also your son at some point too. We can get into that.
Yeah, when I was a child, I guess I was always looking to be accepted. So I didn't love myself, obviously. So I just started to hang out with people that were doing things. And my dad would constantly ride me about doing this, doing that. And I would think he's a jerk. I didn't.
One thing, Bob, did you feel like you fit in your own family?
No.
Me either. Tommy, did you?
Nope.
I just want people to realize that while Bob's talking, he's saying he didn't feel like he didn't fit in. That's the thing, is like a lot of people don't feel like they fit in with their family.
At all.
I felt like a square peg in a round hole.
Yeah, like a straight outcast.
Absolutely.
And I was really coming up just like them. And my dad, I can't say, like, when I was real young, I lived kind of crappy. But my dad, when he sobered up, he ended up with a job with the city. Like, so he always loved us. Our life changed like that. But I didn't know how to fit in with my family. So I always went to the crowd that was allowed to stay out all night.
Yep.
Didn't have to ask their parents for nothing to do anything. They just went and did it. And then eventually the drugs and everything started taking play. And when I really started to get high and indulge in the drugs, I really felt like I was an outcast. Because, we'd have a family event and I would be late. The reason I'm late is because I just went and bought a $20 bag of heroin.
Yeah.
So I'm walking in, normally 230 pounds, and I'm 170 pounds. And everybody's looking at me. So then I'm telling myself, let's just leave. They don't want me here anyways. Well, really, they want me back. They just want me to be a part of the family again. And my poor mom, man, she would make so many excuses for me to my family members. Like, there'd be times she would be like, here's $20. Go to the store and get me a Polar Pop that's 59 cents. Now, I know it was her money, but she would do that because she knew that I was gonna go get a bag of dope if I was sick and we had a family event. Like, it just got to the point where I completely excluded myself from my family. I started hanging out with people that was really bad. And then, they would stop communicating with me. Because, see, if I was completely strung out, the only thing I had to worry about was my addiction. I didn't have to worry about you calling me like, hey, I need you to go do this, or I need you to come mow my grass, or just random stuff that you would do for your parents and not charge them nothing. I knew it, like I was a loser.
Yeah.
And I started to accept that. And that was crazy. I should have never done that.
Well, and I want to say, like, a lot of people do that because so they subconsciously create distance with themselves and their families in a way that will destroy the relationship, like hanging out with people your family don't want to hang out with. A lot of people feel like a black sheep and they start using And that even like perpetuates the feeling further, right? Where you feel more like a black sheep because you started using to feel better about not fitting in. But then the thing that made you feel like you might be able to fit in because it made you feel good so you could actually try to make connections now further alienates you from it, right? So people will push away because they feel so ashamed of who they are that if they get too close again, it just brings that shame up and it's too much for them to handle. So I think a lot of parents are like, why does my kid keep doing this to me? Why do they keep making these bad choices? A lot of it's because they're so ashamed of who they are as a person.
100%.
So if they don't have to go around you, but it's like this Dr. Jekyll and Hyde, it's like this Jekyll and Hyde thing where it's like you so badly crave to be a part of a family, but at the same time, you want to push away. It scares you, right? So that's why a lot of people say like addiction seems like true insanity, and it is because like just like they say, you know, addicts are egomaniacs and have an inferiority complex at the same time. It's the same thing. You want so badly to belong, but it scares you so much that you push away. But then you resent people for keeping you at an arm's length because you did the stuff to push them away, right? I mean, That's what you were going through.
Well, you know, if you were dope sick and literally you had to be right here with your family, but if you knew, even though it's going to crush your family, that if you go out this side door, you can get what you need. You're going to go out there.
100 times out of 100.
And it doesn't, it's not that you don't love your family. It's the addiction is real.
You love the dope more. Like you feel like you need it.
So that's why like today, like doing the things that I do, I understand where a lot of them's coming from because I've literally, man, left my son standing outside waiting on me. I have. I've called, hey, Dad, you coming? And yeah, I'm right around the corner and I'm 2 hours away. Like I couldn't tell you how many times I've came into the house and my son's sleeping with his jacket still on at my sister's house on the couch and her be so mad at me. Like, are you serious? Look what you did. You left him here. Stop telling him you're coming. Stop getting him, you know what I mean? And in my mind, I wanted to. I had full intentions of doing that. But my addiction was so real that it overpowered me.
Had that grip on you.
Oh man, it's unreal. So people say, oh, you gotta want it. Man, no, you don't. You just gotta do it.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm serious. Like that irritates you. You'll hear that. Oh, your family even say, oh, you just gotta want to do it. You gotta do it. Well, if it was that dang easy, I would be doing it. You know what I mean? It's really not, man, because you take a person that is a workaholic, builds $1 million companies, and you take them away from that and put them at McDonald's working, they're going to be nuts. They're going to go crazy because they're addicted to that lifestyle of what they do. And that's an addict, a homeless person. A lot of homeless people today, they're comfortable with the fact that they don't have to be responsible. They don't have to work. They can pitch a tent, panhandle $10, $15 a day to fix whatever they're feeling, and they're good with that. But if you would take them and really clean them up in a year, I guarantee you they would look at themselves like, wow, what was I doing? But that lifestyle and that drug has got a hold of them so much. There's people probably out here that their parents pass them daily. And that's my son right there, doing bad, pushing the shopping cart. Or people like, that's my dad right there, you know what I mean? Kids walk into a basketball game to play basketball this weekend, gonna see their dad sitting over there underneath a bridge. And from my point of view with it, like addiction has tore my whole entire family apart. From uncles, cousins, aunts. And it tore me apart. Like I could not for the life of me get sober. I really couldn't, man. I would kick the withdrawals, man, in jail. And then I'm talking, oh, I ain't never doing that. And then as soon as they call your name to pack up, you was getting out. The only thing on your mind was getting high.
You started to get a little giddy, got the feeling in your stomach, your palms sweating a little bit. You're like,
get released from prison. First thing on your mind is, I got to get a haircut. I got to look good. So when I leave, but then when you get released, it's not, I want to go home, hug my family. Nah, you're looking for the first dirty butt and a bag of dope.
Yep.
That's what comes to your mind. And here you got kids and moms, dads, aunts, uncles that has been more or less doing time the whole time you were.
They do time with you,
without
don't you? They do time with you, don't they?
So excited. My mom picked me up from prison one time. On the way home, now this woman always looked out for me for commissary. But on the way home, she's like, so you'll come out to the house tonight and stay the night? I'm like, man, listen, I've been locked up. I'm trying to go over here. And it crushed her heart. It really honestly did. She went with it. She bought me an outfit, took me to the store, got me an outfit. And she's like, so you don't want to just come, we'll order a pizza, watch some TV, you know what I mean? Just hang out with me.
All she want to do is spend time with her son.
And now she's gone. I would give anything to do that 100 times. And I was like, nah. But the only thing that was on my mind was this girl. But once I got with her, I ended up drinking. So now the only thing that's on my mind is getting high. Because speed goes hand in hand with me with drinking. So that's what's on my mind. So now I'm not even really worried about the girl. Now I'm worried about the drug. And here it is 3 days later, fresh out of prison and haven't talked to any of my family members, walking around with no money, looking dirty, crazy. Now I got to walk back into the house with all of them. Now they're all mad at me.
Yep. And you did that because of how you felt about yourself, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you didn't feel like you belong. I mean, and I think a lot of people, they don't even recognize it. But the reason we reach for those things is because we want something to make us feel better. It goes back to that feeling of not being okay, right? We don't feel comfortable in our own skin. So we think sex is going to make me feel better. Well, temporarily, yeah. But after, I mean, it's right. There's a lot of meaningless sex that can happen, right? After that, then you're on to the next thing because you still don't feel no better, right? Now I'm going to drink. That made me feel a little bit better for a little while, but I still feel like crap. So I'm on to the next thing. And it escalates. It escalates and it's a vicious cycle. And then when you're done, by the time you realize all that stuff is empty and it didn't do anything for you, it's too late because now you got to walk back in with your family. And now what did you feel? Even more shame. And now you have to, you got to own it.
You know, when it was all said and done, and I went through everything I went through, and I came home from prison this last time, my mom and dad was the only two people that was still there. I'm serious.
So all the people you ran with, they weren't there.
Oh no,
all the
man.
people, all the girls you're trying to impress, they weren't there for you.
Man, I tattooed girls all over me in prison. You know what I mean? And came home to none of them.
And I'm saying that to make a point. Like,
yeah. Oh, I'm serious. Like it's not. It was my mom and dad.
Yep.
And I remember when I came home and I got to working at my dad's house and saving up some money, I couldn't wait to take him to lunch. I really couldn't. My mom would call, and I remember asking her one day, and she's like, man, I'm hungry for a pizza. I hung up and ordered a pizza to my mom's house. I go to her house. When I was about a year sober, I'm up visiting her, and she gave me some money like, here, let's go get some breakfast. My mom was a bigger lady. She was confined. She couldn't really leave her house, so I went. And I come back, and I handed her money. She's like, you didn't pay for that? I'm like, yeah, I paid for it. Like, it felt good. It really did, man. Mother's Day, buying my mom something. Not having somebody else buy it, put my name on it. Not my sister buying it and me putting money in on, I was buying it. And sending it to her, it felt good. It really did, man. Like,
my mom always used to tell me, she'd be like, one of these days you're gonna buy something nice for me. And then last year for Christmas, I bought her a purse, and that was definitely one of the best feelings ever to be able to do that.
It is.
Yeah, my mom was my homeboy, man. Like, and I didn't. That's why I hate drugs so much now. Because the one person that meant more to me in this world than anything, and man, out of all of her kids, she stuck by my side.
I'm
100%.
Also my mom's favorite child, so.
I definitely am. You know
I'm my mom's favorite son, but
yeah.
I got two sisters.
I'm just kidding.
and she was there, man, and I crapped on her so many times. It seemed like,
Yeah.
I really did.
Yeah, every time we go, like we talk to a group or whenever I'm speaking, just kind of to convey you know, how, like, just the hold that my addiction had over me. I always tell the same exact story. So I'm the same way. Like, I'm first person to admit I'm 100% a mama's boy. My mom was always my best friend. She was always there for me no matter what. But I think it was in 2016, she had some blood clots in her lungs, and one of them ended up going to her heart, and her heart like pumped it out, and then so it clotted in her chest. And basically, she was at the hospital. The hospital sent her home, and then my dad found her collapsed in the bathroom, like blue, like she was, you know, dying. And so they took her back to the hospital. I was at work at the time. My brother called me and told me what happened. He's like, "You need to come meet me at the hospital." And this was in Warsaw. He's like, "You need to come meet me at the hospital right now." So I leave work, stop and get high first, obviously, because I can't go to the hospital and deal with that if I'm not high first. And then as soon as I get to the hospital, the doctor there is telling my dad that he needs to give her this shot. And if he gives her this shot, it might kill her. But if he doesn't give it to her, she's going to die. So they give her the shot. They put her on the helicopter and fly her to Lutheran here in Fort Wayne. And so all my family's there. My aunt is on her way from, like, aunt hopped on a flight and flew up here from Alabama. Like, everybody, my whole family was there. So they all follow each other to Lutheran in Fort Wayne and ask me if I want to ride with them. I'm like, "No, I'll meet you guys there." Obviously, I got to stop and make sure I've got enough heroin to take with me. So we get there, and then when I get there, a different doctor's telling my dad, and I remember this like it was yesterday. He said, "This is a death event. People don't survive this. You need to go say bye to her." So my brother and my dad and I go in the room. She's got like tubes going in her mouth and her nose. She's like bleeding out of her mouth, out of her nose, like everywhere she could have been bleeding, like just had blood all over the place. And so we basically just said bye to her, you know, gave her a hug. And then everybody, all my family was back out in the waiting room. I left. I was like, I don't know how to deal with this, for one. And like, the only thing that I could even think about at that time was I need to get high. So I'm out in my car shooting up in the hospital parking lot while all my family's up there, basically just waiting for the doctor to come tell them that my mom was dead. And thank God she survived that somehow, you know, but that's always the story that I tell, just to like convey that message of how strong addiction truly is. So that was just one of the many things that I did to push my family away. Like, they're all up there together, and I'm, you know, gone. And I always used to say, like, the first few times that I went to rehab, like, I always had a reservation that if something happened to my mom, I don't know if I'd be able to stay sober through that. And, you know, you did, and we definitely commend you for being able to do that. But that was always my thought process. It was like, there's no way that I'll be able to stay sober for that. But now, you know, 6 years later, and having the relationships that I do with my family now, especially with my mom, with my dad, my brother and his kids, and like all my grandparents and aunts and uncles, like I have really good relationships with all of them now. And so now if something like that were to happen, like I know that I would need to be there for all of them just as much as they, you know, would be there for me if something like that ever happened. So it really is crazy how much that dynamic changes when we get our lives together and start being decent human beings and trying to improve our relationships with our families. And it takes work. It don't happen overnight, right? Like, I'm sure it took you time. Like, when you came home with your dad, he had all these rules set out for you.
All kinds of.
I remember you told me that story. He's like, one of the rules that he had for you were like, "Well, I guess I'm not coming to your house then." But
yeah, it was
went.
the church. He said I would go to church on Wednesday and twice on Sundays. I said, "Man, you can't make me go to church like that." And he said, "This is my house, my rules," and pulled over on the side of the freeway.
Yeah.
And said, "Get out."
He was done.
Yeah.
But it's because he loved you, though, right?
Oh, absolutely, right? So I remember calling my son for almost a year. For real, a year, man, every day. I mean, I might get him once a week. "What's up?" That was it. Like, I'd be like, "Hey, man, we gonna get together?" "Nah, man, I got stuff going on."
That's what your son would say?
Yeah, like blow me off, right? Now, calls me all the time.
That's awesome.
All the time. Like, now we go down and I hang out with him. Like, I just was there almost a month ago, and we were sitting out back of his house, man. And we were smoking a Black and Mild. And he was like, "I miss my grandma." And I'm like, "Man, here it comes." You know what I mean? I'm like, "Yeah." I said, "Me too." I said, "I miss her too, man. I really do." He was like, "Dad, that was the one person that I never had to wonder if loved me." He was like, "I always knew you loved me." He said, "But you was never there.
Yeah.
I couldn't call you, man." And I'm like, and now I'm just like, man. So we've never really had a full conversation about my addiction until that night. That night we both cried.
Yeah.
Like we had that conversation that I've been like dreading having with him, but we had it, right? We sat out there and I told him, I said, you know, he said, my brother's dad is strung out on heroin, bad, doesn't do nothing for him, and I stopped him. I said, you know, I know what he's going through. I said, I do. And he kind of looked at me like, what you mean? I said, addiction's real, man. I said, you know how many times I wanted to come get you? I wanted to just go shoot basketball with you, go watch your football games. And I couldn't because I was sick. And when I would get high thinking I could go do it, that's when I would want to go hustle. That's when I wanted to be involved in everything instead of, I would use the excuse, well, let me get $20, $25. I'll get this bag and then I'll go over here to Easter dinner. Man, bro, as soon as I do the bag, now my mind isn't at the dinner. It's over here because, well, they need this and they need that. And if I go get this for them, I can make this off of this. And that's how it happened for me, right? So we're talking and he just starts crying and stuff, man. And he was like, you know, Dad, I hated drug addicts growing up. He said, I thought they was a waste of space, man. He said, I ain't believe nobody could change, he said, until you changed. He said, and I believe now that anybody can quit doing drugs. Cause I really was the epitome of it, man. Like I was that guy, man. Like it was insane. Like doing whatever I had to do to get it. And it didn't matter who I hurt in the process.
Yeah. I mean, so I think it's important to point out that with our families, you know, obviously they don't like it when we steal from them when it's things like jewelry or money, but the things that you steal that really matter to people are time, right? Joy, peace, sleep. You know what I mean? Like stuff you can't get back. Yeah. Takes a lot of work. I mean, we don't get there overnight, so it's not going to be fixed overnight. I think that's a lot of people's misconception about recovery is they think that, you know, like I'm 30 days sober. Why doesn't my family forgive me? Why doesn't everybody trust me all of a sudden? A very wise man once said, people treat you how you train them. You know, when we train our families to treat us a certain way. You know, we talk a lot about, it's very popular right now, reducing stigma. And I do think that's important. We don't want to shame people for what they do. But I always tell people when I talk to them, especially people who are substance users like I was, and I'm in recovery now, obviously. But there's a reason why we get treated differently than other people. You know, like we do steal and lie and cheat. So when you get sober, you don't automatically get it flipped out on its head. So Bob was sharing a story about his son and how they had a great moment. You know, you talked a lot in the last episode about how you had you know, set your son up many times in the sense that you told him you were coming to get him, or you tell somebody I'll be there in a minute. He'd find him on your sister's couch with his coat on because he thought you were going to pick him up. He'd fall asleep and she'd be mad at you. You know, and in your heart, you meant like, I'm going to be there. You wanted to be there so bad, but the addiction was pulling you away. So what kind of work did you have to put in when you came home from prison the last time? And what did that look like? And what did it cost you as far as like giving things up to create opportunities for you to mend that relationship? Because I think a lot of people don't realize how that's hard work, right? I mean, it's the same as recovery. Recovery has so many parallels to life, right? But basically the core of recovery is you make really tiny steps in a positive direction. Like, it sounds cliche, but you do the next right thing. Keep doing the next right thing. Keep doing the next right thing. You do enough of those little things right, it'll lead up to big stuff, right? And that's why it's so hard, because nothing works as quick as just taking a shot of dope, right? That fixes it for us. We want everything to be fixed now. So what kind of work did you have to put in, Bob, to get that moment with your son and for it to be like legitimate, you know?
So for me, it was people, places, and things. When I came home from prison this last time, I had to completely cut off anybody that I ever socialized with.
The only thing you had to change was everything, right?
Everything. So if I told Jaden, I'm going to call you at 9:10 tomorrow morning, I called him at 9:10. If I told my dad I was going to mow his grass at 8 o'clock in the morning, I got up at 8 o'clock in the morning and I did it. So the biggest for me was hold my word to no matter what it was. I realized instead of being a people pleaser, like, oh yeah, I'll do that for you. I'll come pick you up. Just saying it.
Right.
You can't do that when you have to really, you have to mean it.
You got to walk the walk.
Yeah, right. So like with Jaden, I've done apologize so many times throughout that kid's life.
It doesn't mean anything anymore.
Not a daggone thing, bro,
Our
right?
kids don't owe us anything, right?
Nothing.
We owe them everything.
So the way I apologize to my son now is through my actions.
Mm-hmm.
I really do. Like, I started like helping. I volunteered at my dad's church. And this is all the little stuff that helped me be able to be the person that my son needed. Because it was the little, I was so easy.
One of the other things that does too is when, like, you probably thought you were a terrible person for a long time, right?
Yeah.
And I did too, and I know you did too. Like, when we first get sober, again, for us, you know, mentally, for me, like, that didn't really change. Like, I still felt like I was a bad person underneath all the other stuff, but it took a lot of stuff like that, like doing those little things, holding the door open for somebody, just like really small things like that for me to be able to believe that, okay, you know, I've done a lot of pretty terrible things. I've hurt a lot of people. You know, we talk about that difference between guilt and shame pretty often. Like, guilt is healthy for us. We should feel bad for the things that we've done.
Yep.
But it doesn't necessarily make us bad people. And so it takes a lot of that, a lot of those little steps that you talked about, a lot of doing the next right thing, regardless of how small and insignificant that may seem at the time, for me to be able to believe, all right, maybe I'm not that bad of a person. And if I can start to believe that, then, well, they made it.
You fake it till you make it. I mean, it sounds cliche and weird, but and people say, oh, I don't want to be fake. Well, in the beginning, you have to be, because you're still going to feel like the same piece of crap you think you are. And you're going to want to do the same piece of crap type stuff, right? I mean, you said just the minute you got home, I want to go get a girl. I want to go get drunk. I want to go get high. Like, that's not going to change unless your actions change. A lot of people, the misconception is, and Bob was touching on earlier, but recovery is not people who want it or need it. It's people who do it. And essentially that means stop saying that I'm not ready yet or I haven't hit rock bottom. Rock bottom is a choice. Like, change is a choice. If you wait to feel all the willingness in the world to get that stuff done,
not gonna happen.
If you wait to feel like you're in recovery, it's never going to happen. So if you wait to feel like you want to show up for your kids, or you wait to feel like you want to make an amends to your parents by doing something nice for them, don't wait. Do it.
Right.
Because if you let your feelings and your thoughts dictate your actions, you're going to have a tough life. Our feelings get us in trouble, and our feelings are not facts. You have to use your actions to dictate your feelings and your thoughts. It's just like going to the gym, right? When I go to the gym a lot of days, I don't want to be there. Sometimes early in the morning, I'm tired, but I get going. By the time I'm midway through my workout, I'm warmed up, I got a pump, I'm feeling pretty good, I'm glad I'm there. By the time I'm done, man, I'm so glad I got that done. And it creates momentum, and then on to the next thing, on to the next positive thing. It's the exact same thing with recovery, man. Like, any of you out there too who have jobs and you've made it somewhere in your career, listen, promotions aren't for people who need them or want them. It's people who do the work. It's the same thing with recovery, and it's the same thing with making amends to your family. And that's exactly what you're talking about. You start showing up. Showing up is what? Half the battle. They say suit up and show up. So what are some of the other things, man, that you did? And I mean, was that hard for you to do that? I mean, did you have to really, like, just make yourself do it?
You know, yes and no, because like there was a part of me even coming out that didn't want to be sober.
Of course,
Really
everybody
did.
feels that way.
But then I also had this little part of me that I wanted to. I remember being in places getting high and truly, honestly, be sitting there like, man,
What am I doing here?
I don't belong with these people, man.
Dude.
I don't. Like, and I really honestly didn't. Like, there was days in prison eating chow and look over and be like, I'm not that person. I'm not him. I still got some kind of compassion in my heart, right? And so when I came home, like, I didn't want to really necessarily be sober, but I wanted my son in my life. I really did. Like, God put that on my heart. Like, I really wanted my son in my life. But when I started changing things, man, I'd wake up some days like, it ain't worth it. It ain't worth it. And then I would just, my dad would come in like, what are you doing? Get up. And I'd be like, man. So the more I would do it, it would get easier for me.
Yeah.
But I would have them hard times.
Yeah.
Sitting in Arkansas, sober.
Right.
By myself.
Yeah.
My son's in Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
My family's in Indiana.
Probably felt like you were never going to make it back to him.
Hey, man, you know how many times I sit out and I told my dad a couple times, like, what's the point of being sober, man?
That's very normal.
My mom's sick, dying in Ohio. I'm here. You're retired. I'm living at your house. I said, and he was like, Bob, you're my son. He was like, and I'll do that for you. But I'm like, what's the point, man? I got a job. What am I going to spend the money on? I don't got no wife, nothing like that. So I would battle with that up and down. And then, I don't know, man, like.
But you kept putting one foot in front of the other.
Oh, 100%.
Your dad, so that was like your people, right? Mm-hmm. So before, the people you around be like, you know what, man? Screw it. You're right. Man, screw that. Let's go get messed up.
I got to the point where, like, I remember a chick one time picked me up at his house. And I told her, I don't drink or nothing. Hey, man, I'm like, where we going? She's like, I stopped by the liquor store. She's like, I'm going to get a bottle. And I was like, nah, man. Like, it was a red flag. Like, you know, if you see a bunch of glass on the road, you ain't going to drive your truck through. You're like, I ain't going that way.
Right.
This is how I started feeling. This is how recovery was hitting me. And I'm sitting in the car while she goes in the liquor store. Now, she done drove like an hour to get me.
Right.
And
will you find her on Tinder or something?
I don't know which one it was, but I found her.
One of the apps.
So she comes out, but while she's in there, I truly, honestly, in my mind, played this out. I'm like, man, I don't know how she acts drunk, and she don't know how I act drunk. Now, who's to say I'm not gonna get drunk if she drinking, and then I gotta call my dad? Hey, man, you were right, come get me. And if I'm drunk, he's gonna kick me out. So when she come out and got in the car, I'm like, hey, man, check it out. She's like, what's up? We about to go to my house. I said, nah, take me home. She's like, huh? And I'm like, don't trip. I'll give you gas money for coming down here, but I don't want to go. She's like, what do you mean? I'm like, I told you I don't drink. You don't got to drink. Yeah, but I don't want that a part of my life, man. I really don't. She's mad at me, man. She don't want to talk to me the whole way to my dad's. And she starts tripping. I'm like, hey, you can stop and let me out here if you want to. Now, this was on, like, it was right around the 4th of July because my dad had invited me to go to a cookout. And I was like, nah, man, I'm going to go with the old girl. And he was like, you know, you might not want to do that. And I'm like, man, whatever.
He was wise.
And now I got to tell him he was right. You know what I mean? So when we pull up, I was like, here, I don't want your money. I'm like, oh, cool. Put it back in my pocket. She leaves. I go inside. I remember sitting down on his recliner. And my son came to my mind. My son did, man. Like, so I called Jay, talking to him. He don't really want to talk. Hang the phone up. My dad comes in like, I thought you was leaving. And I said, well, she went to the liquor store. And I don't drink. And he stopped in his like, he's got like a foyer thing in his house going outside. And he stopped and turned around. And he was like, I'm proud of you, man. He was like, I'll tell you what, come with us.
That probably made you feel.
Man, it was crazy. And I said, Pop, man, I'm just going to stay here. So he leaves. 5 minutes later, my dad turns around, comes back to the house. And he comes in. I said, what are you doing? He said, well, I'm going to hang out with you.
Oh,
and we sat down and we watched some old Western, I think. But me and my pops, we didn't talk a whole bunch. We just sat there and chilled. And that was at a time when I started seeing like, there really is a life out here. There really truly is, right? And I'm starting to be a part of one. And I started to reach out to my family members and, hey, I'm sober. Well, how long? How long are you going to stay sober? I said, well, I can't promise you tomorrow. But as of right now, I don't want to get high. I don't want to. And I don't tell, they're like, oh, well, I'm not going to tell you I'm not getting high tomorrow. I'm going to tell you right now I'm not getting high. I'm not. At this moment, sitting in this studio,
One day at a time.
I'm not getting high. I don't never want to break a promise like that to somebody else again in my life, man.
Wow.
Because everybody's got that certain person in their life that they really truly don't want to hurt no more. And mine is my son. And I don't never, ever, ever want my son to be called by somebody and be like, hey, your dad passed away to a drug overdose. I don't want that, man. I don't want that to ever happen. So I started like just building stuff with them, and they started seeing through my actions that I was with it, that I was being serious.
So it was just really putting one foot in front of the other.
Yeah.
But doing things with them that were simple things. I think a lot of people think apologies have to be big and loud and, like, well, if I really want to apologize to my family, I got to take them to Disney World. They don't care about that.
Silent was me more sometimes.
I bet your dad that will just sit at home watching movies with you probably is one of his favorite memories. He could care less about the cookout. I'm sure he loves to eat like everybody, but sitting there with his son, being proud of you for walking away.
We talk all the time, me and my dad. I promise you, like my dad has so much a part of my recovery that it is unreal, man. Like,
it's beautiful.
He's in recovery himself, been sober since I think he said his sobriety date's like 1998,
That's
1997. And no relapses, straight, like
one chip wonder.
Yeah. And he's a judgmental person, but he's one of the greatest guys I've ever met in my life. And see, I've had this my whole life. I just didn't realize it. I had the dad that everybody should have in their life, my whole entire life. You see what I'm saying? Once he stopped drinking, I had that dad. And I didn't see it. And it was all because of addiction, man.
Right.
And addiction starts with anything, bro. Like females, weed, drugs, alcohol, you know what I mean? Because, when we start learning how to get high, it's usually from one person. We sneak off and get high with them or drink something with them, right? So then eventually we meet one other person. Now we start to meet this person. Next thing you know, we know how to do it ourselves. We start networking, right? When I started working at Allendale, my networking of people that is in recovery has went crazy. Yeah, so like now there's no reason to have a bad day and not be able to call somebody.
Right.
200 people on my phone that I can call to sober. I didn't have one before. Now if I pick my phone up right now, I do not have a number saved to my phone of a person that is an active heroin user, fentanyl user. None of that. I don't have it. I really don't. And I take pride in that today. And my son, I work every single day to change that relationship with him, right? To show him that I am sorry. And now we kick it, we laugh, we joke, we go places. He comes to my house. I take my grandson places. Like he's finally got a dad. Even though he's 21 now, he's still my baby, you know what I mean? But I love it, man. I love what recovery's done for me. And I love to be able to show families that are like, man, my son, he's gone. There's no coming back. And I'm like, hold on now. I could show you 4, 5, 6 other people that was completely there too. And their mamas was saying the same thing. And look what they're doing now. You know what I mean? Like, it is possible, man. And I feel bad for a lot of the families because I know what the addict's going through, man. I really do. I know because they'll tell us, you got to go. You'll sleep outside on the bridge tonight. And we're like, all right, okay. Now, I'm not going to never let you back in my house again. Okay. Because in our mind, it's our mom. They will.
Yeah, you show up knocking on the door looking hungry, she's going to let you in.
Yeah. We get her away from dad. It's good. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, I remember my mom didn't want to go to a room alone with me because I knew she'd give in. If there wasn't somebody else in that room, hey, mom, man, can I get $20? Can I get $100? Like, for real. Like, my mom would give in. And there's a lot of people that's like that, you know what I mean? They know all they got to do is get their mom over here to the side and then they're going to cave. And we deal with a lot of people like that today that their moms, it's hard. You got to tell them, like, you got to leave if you want us to talk to them because they're going to try and protect them.
Yep. It's hard for mothers. It's really hard.
Yeah.
Hard for fathers too, but mothers, it's different. Like, mothers are the only ones that carried them for 9 months. They birthed them, like there's a special bond with mothers and their children, and, I think it's in your story, Bob, it's important to point out that you let it, it took as long as it took to rebuild the relationship with your dad. Obviously it was quicker, but again, what I said before is our children owe us nothing. We owe them everything, right?
Everything.
So parents, it's going to be easier to repair the relationship with your parents than it is with your kids, right? So with you didn't try to force it. You had to let it take its course. You had to move at his pace with what he was comfortable with, right? I mean, I think it's highly important for people to realize that, especially if they're trying to rebuild a relationship with their kids. Like, you have to respect where they're at. I always tell people in recovery, like, we don't get to tell people when they have to forgive us. We don't get to tell people when they have to move on from what we did to them.
Even though we want to.
Yeah, even though you want to, and you might feel entitled, but that's your addiction talking to you. Our addiction makes us entitled. So you have to throw that out of your mind and let people help dictate to you what pace they want to go at, what they're comfortable with, right? Like
Tommy said, do 30 days in rehab and you come home and you're like, hey, man, I'm healed.
Yep.
I'm good. I'm good. You shouldn't hold that against me no more, because I would do that. Like, I haven't gotten high in 3 days. I'm sober.
Well, we forget, too. Addicts, we forget how bad it was. Where I was like, hey, man, it wasn't that bad. Our family,
they don't forget.
They just started sleeping again after 30 days. Like, they have a lot of families here. And the one thing people need to know about their family, your family has PTSD from what you've done to them a lot of times. And people are like, well, I didn't do anything that bad. Maybe I was just drunk on the couch. It's hard to see somebody you love waste away, drinking, just laying there, passed out drunk. That can be traumatic for people. Seeing their parent, somebody they look up to, right, or their kid, trashed all the time. It doesn't matter. If you think you haven't traumatized your family, you're lying to yourself.
It's 10 years later, and I've been sober for 6 of those 10. I know my mom and dad still have nightmares from when they found me overdosed on the floor.
My God. I mean, my parents are still in therapy. They go to a very nice lady named Margaret Coates. You know Margaret. She was our clinical director at Fort Wayne Recovery for a long time. But, she does EMDR therapy, which is the rapid eye movement therapy, which helps people process trauma. Like, I know
my mom has done that with Margaret also.
And it's super helpful for people. But what I'm trying to get at again, and I know I've already reiterated this several times, but you have to give them space. For them, if you try to come in too quick, you're going to trigger that PTSD. And our families, just like when we're craving, we go into fight or flight. Your heart starts racing, your palms start sweating, you start to feel a little queasy in your stomach, like, you get the little butterfly feeling. They get the other side of fight or flight, where it's fear. They start shaking. They don't know what to do, right? Because they know something bad's about to happen to either them or to you. So you got to give people time, and you have to give them space to heal. I mean, little things like what you were saying, just calling your son and not pressing him on, like, come on, man, let me come see you, man. Come on, I'm different. You're just like, okay, hope you're having a good day, buddy. Love you, and just keep it at that for a little while. Tommy, what'd you have to do to kind of create time and space?
So the last time I got out of treatment in April of 2018, my mom and dad were on vacation. I think they were in Alabama, and I was getting ready to get discharged from this program. And I called my mom, and we let them know that I was going to be getting discharged. And they were basically like, "Well, hope you find somewhere to go."
Congratulations on finishing rehab.
Yeah, it was like, because we're not home, but even if we were, you ain't coming here. So I stayed down in Indy for about 2 years, a little over 2 years maybe. And even when I would come home, which wasn't super often, and they didn't come down there a whole lot either. So for that at least the first year, I didn't really see them a whole lot. And if I did come home, I could just tell like there was a lot of tension in the house, and rightfully so. You know, they weren't going to leave me there alone. It was a while before my brother and his wife were comfortable with me being around their kids, which again, you know, it made perfect sense. Thinking about my niece finding an empty bag of heroin in my closet one time, walking out into the living room with it in her hand in front of all of my family, just like stuff like that happened for years. So it, you know, it was a lot of distance at first, and them kind of just observing from afar. My mom always said that she was cautiously optimistic. Once I started working in this field, it started out working at a halfway house down in Indy that had a recovery program built in, and then with another treatment center, and then working at Fort Wayne Recovery. And it wasn't until 2020 that I ended up actually moving back up to Warsaw and really spending a decent amount of time with them. And I think even at that time, 2.5 years later, there was still that cautious optimism that they had, especially that my mom had. And it just, like we talked about, it just really took them seeing, not just my new actions, but just the patterns that I had changed. So it took a lot of time, and I didn't try to force it either. I didn't try to come home every weekend and hang out with them and let them see, look at me, I'm healthy now, like I'm doing better.
Right.
And
because it wasn't about you, right? Right.
Not at all. And I knew that they needed that too.
Absolutely.
They absolutely needed that. They needed a break from the hell that I had put them through ever since,
hell, they moved away. They still need a break. I'm just
It's true.
I'm messing with
they're
you,
still observing from afar.
Cautiously optimistic down in South Carolina.
Now they're the ones separating themselves just in case.
They got a drone they send up every once in a while to spy on them, probably.
But no, it is cool. Like now when my mom and dad when they come back to Indiana, they stay at my house.
That's great.
Hey, that's a good feeling, ain't it?
Yeah, which is something that I never would have thought would be a thing, let alone that I have a house, but that I have a house that, I've got a room that they can stay in and a bathroom that they can use.
You're not worried about them finding a needle somewhere.
No, I'm worried about making sure I've got coffee and milk for my mom in the morning and
good
something
stuff
for my dad to eat. It's like
stuff that's fun to worry about.
When your parents can come and stay at your house, when you never thought that right there.
I used to live in a box. Yeah,
man, my dad comes, stays at my house, dude, and like it's a feeling. Like I remember walking out and my dad passed out on my couch, just laid back, and I just started laughing, man. And my wife's like, "What's wrong?" I'm like, "Look, this is my house. You know what I mean? Like for real. Like he's comfortable
enough to
shoes
fall asleep.
off.
Yeah."
Because if he ain't comfortable, like even in my sister's at times, he sleeps with his boots on. Like if he's not comfortable, he'll just fall asleep and like be clothed. But at my house, he pulled his shirt off, got his shoes off, and passed out, and it was a good feeling, man.
Yeah,
I'm like,
absolutely, it is.
Well, and it's important for people to know that it's not a recovery and rebuilding relationships isn't a straight line. It's not a destination or a point in time. It's a process, right? It's something we're all going to continue to work on probably for the rest of our lives. We're imperfect people, especially in the first year of recovery. I was a train wreck of a human being, so I had backslides, not necessarily getting high, but like telling lies I didn't need to tell, and just making mistakes, things I wasn't used to doing, like showing up for people and doing what I said I was going to do. So, be kind to yourself, be kind to your family, and just do your best. And reach out to us if you need help.
Yeah, well, Bob, thank you for joining us again on the podcast. I'm sure we'll have you back soon. Thank you guys all for watching. This was episode 22, and we hope you see us on episode 23.